25 Most Terrifying Maniacs and Murderers in Human History. We are starting a series of publications about the most frightening and dark serial killers in human history. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode.
The House That Fed on Gratitude. A dark chronicle of love, control, and a silence louder than screams. Prologue. A house on the road, where rain remembers footsteps. If you drive west out of Raymond, Washington, the road narrows to a damp strip of asphalt, and the forest leans in like a listener, intent on catching a whisper. The house on Monahan Landing Road looks ordinary. Faded paint, a neat porch, a hose snaking across the grass. In the evening, the windows glow honey warm, and you'd swear the kitchen holds a good kind of tiredness, and a kettle always boiling to the right sort of hush. But every house speaks its own language. This one speaks softly and insistently. There is order here. Its order isn't for comfort, it's for power. Her name is Michelle, but everyone says Shelly. A sweet nickname, warmth at first touch. The sweetness is sticky underneath lean in, and you'll pull away missing skin. She knows how to listen and nod in the right places, how to say "I'm with you" in a way that makes you feel ashamed to doubt it. People come here for a breather after divorce, a lost job, a family fight, an empty wallet. They come for a while. In this house, the word "while" never had a calendar. Part 1. The girl who decided never to ask again. Not much is known about her earliest years, except the essential. She learned young that to ask is to depend, and to depend is to be vulnerable. In a small, rainy logging town where news flies short distances and dies, Shelly mastered a different arithmetic. If you state the rules first, it's harder to wound you. At school, this passed for running the show. She rationed attention, measured out approval, found the button labeled guilt in other people, and pressed it just hard enough that everyone kept smiling. By adulthood, it had become a craft. Her care always came with conditions, though the fine print didn't show at first. "You're safe," she'd say. "I know how to help." Hidden in "I know" was her favorite pleasure to decide for another person, and then remind them forever after who did the saving and who owed the debt. Part 2. A House with One director Shelly married David Knotek. Together, they built their house like a stage. Every newcomer had the same Act 1 warmth at the door. Then came temporary rules for your own good. Wake earlier, call less, keep yourself on track, be grateful. Finally, Act 3 tight isolation wrapped as discipline. Outside contacts thin out, your money and meds end up under supervision, and your feelings start arriving already explained in someone else's voice. The house looked kind precisely because it was disciplined. Cups all faced one way, towels lay in squared stacks, eyes followed cues. Neighbors saw cleanliness and heard the laughs of 3 girls, Nikki, Sammy, and Tori, but missed the core. Here, order was loved more than people. The algorithm of rescue worked for years. Acceptance. You're home now, no one judges you. Obligation. Pitch in a little, you're grateful, right? Debt. You owe those who saved you. Isolation. The outside rattles, you hold off on calls for now. Gaslighting. You're feeling it wrong. Listen to me, I know better. Rituals. For your own good come small disciplinary practices. Legends. If someone disappears, the story is ready in advance. Part 3. Those who came for a while. Kathy Loreno. Laughter that grew rare, a hairdresser from South Bend. At first, she filled the kitchen with laughter and the smell of onions browning, cutting hair on a stool by the window, humming along to the radio. The house seemed brighter for having her. Then rules tightened. Up earlier. Eat on schedule. Don't call the ones who upset you. It sounded sensible, then inevitable, then the only right thing. Kathy vanished. To the outside. Ran off with a trucker to California. To the house. A closed drawer you were rude to pull open. Shane Watson, the boy with a camera 19, David's step-nephew, quiet, eager to have things work. He slipped into the house's cycle of tasks and grades. For a long time, he believed the problem was him. When he finally understood it wasn't, he reached for a camera so it wouldn't be just me. Truth is an architectural threat in houses built on fog. After Shane vanished, a legend unfolded on cue. He went to Alaska, fishing boats, good money. The North is useful that way, cold and far. Ron Woodworth, the kind man who always could a neighbor for whom could you, and of course are near synonyms. He came to help with a fence, stayed for a while, fell into putting things in order. People saw oddities in the yard, heard sandpaper in Shelly's voice. In 2003, Ron disappeared, and that disappearance cracked the shell. The Knotek daughters and others who'd been whispering something's wrong found their voices. James Mac McClintock, a shadow at the edge of sight, an elderly veteran under Shelly's care. His 2002 death never became a formal part of the Knotek convictions, but the financial and caregiving backdrop added a heavy tone to the portrait of help. For investigators, it wasn't proof. It was a weather front. Part 4. Timeline. How the House Ate the Years. April 15, 1954. Michelle Shelly is born in Raymond, Washington. 1987. Shelly marries David Knotek. A blended family forms. The girls have different fathers but one shared house. 1991. After fights at home, Kathy Loreno moves for a while into the Knotek house. 1991-1994. Rules turn total. Witnesses recall her growing isolation. 1994. Kathy vanishes. The California story takes root. Mid-1990s, Shane disappears. The Alaska fishing boat legend arrives. 2001 to 2003, Ron Woodworth lives with the Knoteks. Neighbors notice disciplinary humiliations. August 2003. After Ron's disappearance, the daughters and witnesses go to the sheriff. The house is searched. Shelly and David are arrested. David begins cooperating and leads police to burials. 2004. Plea package and modified admissions. Shelly, second-degree murder and manslaughter via a special plea form. David, second-degree murder of Shane plus related counts. The judge imposes sentences. 2016, David is paroled. November 8, 2022, Shelly is released after roughly 18 years. Part 5. When the shell cracked, the August when silence spoke. The crack had been forming for years. Teachers' notes, strange chores in the yard, tired eyes at school events. It all drowned in "not my business." When Ron vanished, the girls no longer fit inside their own silence. Teenage words get filed under emotional, yet here emotion was the last honest tool left. Through the door came people who don't ask permission. The house met them with the same neatness and arranged objects as always. David broke first. Silence has shelf life. His had expired. He led to fresh graves and places where the past was already dust. He said the names. He admitted his role in his nephew's fate. In cases like this, confession isn't poetry. It's navigation. Investigating is the craft of patience. One victim without a body, another lost behind years of legends, pieces assembled from testimony and triple-checked coincidences. In August 2003, 2 small points on a county map became sutures pulling the story back together. Part 6. Court. The math of pain and law. Court isn't cinema. There are no arias that make the gallery weep. There are statutes, ranges, and the limits of what can be proved. Prosecutors cut deals. Otherwise, they risked losing everything where bodies were missing, and evidence leaned on the words of people who had lived in fear. Shelly used a plea form that lets you avoid saying, "I'm guilty," while acknowledging, "the state has enough to convict." The preliminary range suggested one number. The judge imposed a larger one, 22 years. David, admitting second-degree murder of Shane and related counts, received just under 15 years. For headlines, it looked too little. For the law, it meant, we held what will withstand appeal. A sentence is letters and digits on paper. For the living, it's years stuffed into a trembling line. Part 7. Errors we're all ashamed of. 1. An adult just left. Police caseloads overflow with voluntary disappearances. Systems grow used to believing convincing inner-circle storytellers. California and Alaska were comforting versions. Soothing should have come second to checking names, calls, the last verified fact, not the last narrative. 2. Body dependence. A body is gold evidence. But no body doesn't mean no crime. When proofs are soft, you double the grind on converging circumstantial facts. 3. The etiquette of non-interference. Small towns cultivate don't pry, which is lovely until private becomes torture in the mask of discipline. We need a culture of polite intrusion. Knock, ask, corroborate. 4. Pleas as harm and help. Public ears hear deal and think leniency. For a prosecutor, it's the tool to avoid losing everything and to land a judgment that survives appeals. 5. After sentencing, nothing. The release of people who spent years engineering control is a test for everyone. Supervision plans rarely match the dread felt by neighbors and survivors. Part 8. Psychological profile and risk factors. A mechanism, not a diagnosis. Core. Control masked as care. Help becomes a loan without a due date. Every mistake accrues interest. Tools. Gaslighting. Systematic reinterpretation of a victim's feelings. You feel it wrong. It's for your own good. Shame as whip. Public lessons. Putting you in order. Dependence on ratings. Isolation. The outside unsettles you. Pause calls visits. Keep funds under watch. Rituals. Repeated discipline practices. Sliding from joke to normal. An executing partner. Someone who carries out and thus normalizes harm, often telling himself he's softening it or preventing worse. Who gets chosen? People at sharp bends, fresh breakups, addiction, illness, poverty, lost footing. It isn't weakness, it's vulnerability, a state in which it's easy to mistake care for harness. Risks visible from outside, help instantly converted into debt. Temporary bans on contact with no end date, disciplinary rituals with humiliation dressed as kindness, disappearance legends that are easy to verify, yet go unchecked. The homeowner as sole source of truth. Part 9. 3 names. The house tried to swallow. Kathy Loreno, 36. Big laugh, big gestures, little rest. She looked for a place to stop holding a brave face. The house gave her tea and a regimen. Her vanishing was narrated as choice. Choice means you state your future steps yourself, not that someone else speaks them for you. Shane Watson, 19. Youth and a sincere drive to be useful. He believed too long that he was the problem, then tried to leave a trace. Cameras cut fog. The house replaced the cut with a map of cold water and distance. Ron Woodworth, 57. A neighbor whose kindness was a master key to his own door. Someone followed him through it. He became the stone the house finally choked on. Part 10. Epilogue. What the man-eating house teaches us. It's easy to say, the monster is to blame. True and too short. The story also holds us neighbors, teachers, co-workers, officers who learned not to ask the extra question. The Knotek house was frightening not only because of one maligned heart, but because of a system of small surrenders. Courtesy instead of verification, legend instead of fact, a spotless kitchen instead of a hard conversation. What should we, those living on nearby streets, do? Don't confuse legend with reality. He left isn't a fact until you know where, to whom, and the last time he was verified alive. Be annoying where lives are involved. Call, confirm, log. See danger in care when its price is silence and debt. Hear children. Their words are inconvenient. Sometimes they're the only honest thing left. Remember the names: Kathy, Shane, Ron. Shelly walked free in November 2022. The law cooled the hot cruelty, weighed it, and locked it up for years. But law doesn't warm. We do by memory, and by knocking where things are too clean and feelings are explained too well. If you ever hear a voice that confidently says it knows better how you should live, set your cup down and step into the rain. Washington rain remembers footsteps. So does the road. Out there, someone can help you shut the door you were long afraid to touch. Appendix. Chronology. Based on public reporting. April 15, 1954. Michelle. Shelly Knotek born. 1987. Marriage to David Knotek. Blended household. 1991-1994. Kathy Loreno lives with the Knoteks. Her disappearance is narrated as left for California. Mid-1990s. Shane Watson disappears. David later admits second-degree murder. 2001-2003. Ron Woodworth lives with the Knoteks, then disappears. August 8-14, 2003. Arrests and charging of the Knoteks. Broad investigation begins. June 21st, August 26, 2004. Pleas and sentencing, modified admissions. 22 years for Shelly, just under 15 for David. November 8, 2022, Shelly released. Related context, suspicion around the 2002 death of James Mac McClintock under Shelly's care. Epilogue, what to do with houses that eat people. The rain dies down, as if it's tired of arguing. The house on Monaghan Landing Road is different now, repainted, trimmed, with new occupants and their habits. But in houses like this, paint is easier to change than language. Language is how the corridor once sounded when words like care, family, and debt were hammered into chains. As long as we remember that, the house won't regain its old power. Memory is the most stubborn renovation. This story keeps tugging at our sleeve. Explain why. Why her? Why did they endure? Why did the neighbors stay quiet? Why didn't the police press the right buttons earlier? Each why has its own quiet, almost embarrassing end. Her, because she chose the oldest instrument of power, deciding for others under the guise of care and charging interest on gratitude. Them, because they arrived here at a moment when all they could manage was breathing, and someone promised, for now, just catch your breath. The neighbors, because in small towns good manners often masquerade as respect for privacy, and it's hard to tell one from the other. The police, because their work isn't about revelations, it's about evidence, and where there's no body, every step is taken on thin ice. Yet, at the end of any truthful horror story, blame is not enough, we need use. And there is use here. We learn to hear alarm bells inside cozy words. Help is not a debt, care is not discipline, and for your own good is not a pass across every boundary. If over a cup of tea someone explains that they know better what you feel, that's not warmth, it's control. If temporary rules outlive a week and demand silence with the outside world, that's not care, it's isolation. If an adult's disappearance fits comfortably into a geographic fairy tale, went north, ran off with a trucker, the story needs facts, not gratitude for having been given a pretty version. We learn to see politeness differently. Politeness isn't looking away, it's knocking and asking in a way that doesn't humiliate a person, but deprives harm of air. The right to tactful intervention is a rare form of courage they don't teach in school. You have to build it yourself, like a muscle. And yes, that muscle will ache sometimes. We learn to be more patient with the law when it doesn't match our thirst for retribution. The law is a cold tool. It can't hug. It can weigh what will survive appeal. Its work rarely sounds like a victory march, more often like a protocol. But precisely because of that protocol, names don't dissolve into legends, and numbers turn into real years fenced off from the future. Still, the center of this story isn't the law or the press or the architecture of evil. The center is three names the house tried to swallow: Kathy Loreno, Shane Watson, Ron Woodworth. Each had a life before this: address laughter, habits, the meaningless little things without which a person stops being specific. Remembering them is the best lock on the doors of any new house where "we know better" gets said too often. The daughters grew up. Their language is different now. In it, the words home, family, and love have been scrubbed clean of borrowed definitions. That's hard work giving words back their plain meaning, but it's what makes adults adult, and that's where the future sits: being able to say no without apologizing and yes without signing a promissory note. What should we, those who read this and live next door, even thousands of miles away, do? Turn "not my business" into "my human business" wherever someone is being kept from breathing. Turn "he left on his own" into "when was the last time he was seen for certain." Turn "care requires silence" into a warning sign, not a form of prudence. Turn "children are too emotional" into listening closely. They're often the first to name things accurately. This story has no perfect ending. Shelly walked free and the world didn't become fairer for it. But it did become a little more literate. Where people once stayed quiet, they now ask more questions. Where they once thanked saviors, they now ask the price. Where doors were once untouchable, there's now a polite but firm knock. And that is enough. Because horror stories don't banish darkness once and for all. They teach us to carry a small flashlight and not be shy about shining it on someone else's doorstep when light is needed as much as bread. If one day you meet a house that smells of bleach, where mugs all face the same way, and the words "we are family" are said too confidently, remember this story. Family has no ledger. Care has no secrecy clause. Gratitude has no collar. Knock. Call in those who know how to arrive on time. Name things for what they are, even if they push back. Don't be afraid to spill the silence, because in places where silence is louder than a scream, it's the only right sound. And then houses that eat people will remain in the past as warnings, not destinies.